Hey there, my friends. Welcome to a Sunday afternoon live here with Paul of Legally Armed America. And I'll kill my intro music there here in a second as a couple of you guys come rolling in. I've got a little bit different topic that I want to talk to you guys about today. I hope you guys will bear with me on this because this is not directly a gun-related topic. It is a freedom-related topic. And it is going to be a warning to some folks out there who may not be as intelligent as the average person is. What I'd like to do is I'm going to preface this story by letting you know that if you have anybody that directly relies on you, like directly for their own safety, you probably, some of this video is a little bit disturbing. It's not gory, it's not gruesome, but people who have a big heart and a legitimate heart sometimes have a little bit hard time seeing other people being mistreated and seeing other people mistreat people. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play a very short clip first. This is regarding the, obviously, as you see on the headline right here, anger as 7 police arrest crying autistic teenage girl for saying one looks like a lesbian nana. I'm going to give you a very quick backstory before we play the video because I want you to understand what you're looking at when you see it. If you have not heard about this story, I will fill you in real quick. If you have heard it, please bear with me as I share some of these details. A 16-year-old autistic, now granted, this was in England, by the way, guys, so I want to make sure you all understand that. And I know this is America, but I have a reason for wanting to bring up this story. For obvious reasons, and we'll go into that a little bit later too. A 16-year-old autistic girl was arrested in northern England this week after saying that a female police officer looked like her lesbian grandmother. Her lesbian grandmother, she calls her Nana. She made the comment that, well, let me tell you this first, how we got to that point. I'm going to make sure that I have that. Okay, here we go. Cops had been called earlier in the evening to provide a safe escort home for the autistic girl. Now, this girl apparently is a higher functioning autistic. For those of you that know, I have a 14, very soon to be 15-year-old autistic son. Now, my son is very low functioning, and that's why this story is kind of near and dear to my heart because I see my son's face when I see this girl. So my son is very low functioning. It sounds like this girl is not high functioning, but she's higher functioning than my son. In other words, clearly she can leave the house without her parents supervising. My son can't. So she had gone somewhere, I think with friends, and police thought she was intoxicated. No word on whether or not she was. Excuse me. So because they suspected that, they brought her home, which was kind of surprising that she was able to go with the police without heavy protest or anything. Well, when they get home, they get her home to her parents. They bring her inside, and she made the comment. One of the women, see if I can pull it up real quick so you guys can see. God dang it. Do I not have that picture? Maybe I don't. Yeah, here's one anyway, that you can at least see. One of the officers, this one that I'm about to show you, was told, or I'm sorry, wasn't told, but the comment was made that this girl, this officer right here, that one right there, that, and I'm not going to get too much into that person, but that person is a horrible person. So I don't feel bad saying negative things about this potential lesbian. And I don't have any problems with lesbians, just this lesbian I have a problem with. This lesbian right here was in the room when the 16-year-old girl said, she looks like she looks like Nana, who's a lesbian. So understand what we're saying here. She did not look at the lesbian looking girl here and say, you look like a lesbian. She was talking to her mother about her grandmother, whom she loves and cares about, who she knows is a lesbian. And she said that this person looked like Nana, who's a lesbian. So she's saying that this person looks like her grandmother. Now, one thing to understand why I can tell you that I know that this 16-year-old is not a high functioning autistic child is because one thing about autistic children, those that can communicate, my son is nonverbal. He's got a very small vocabulary that's difficult to understand, probably 25, 30 words that we can understand. But most of them that do have a full vocabulary and can talk, the one thing they do not have is a filter. They will call a spade no matter what. They don't have a malicious mind. They don't approach things and try to form a phrase and say, I'm going to find a pointed way of saying something to this person to hurt their feelings. They don't have malicious intent. So she didn't look at this lesbian and say, I'm going to direct a comment in her direction so that I can hurt her feelings, make her feel bad, demean her, or anything like that. That's not how the mind of autistic children and autistic adults, that's not how their minds work. They don't have malicious intent. They simply don't. It's not a thing that they possess. They approach things as genuine as possible. And I tell people all the time, when a truly autistic child says a prayer, I feel like it probably carries way more weight than anybody else, because that is probably the purest form of a prayer that you could get, because these children do not have evil in their mind. They do not have deceit in their mind. Again, no malicious intent. So whenever this autistic girl said that this woman right here, who looks like a lesbian, looked like a lesbian, which is her grandmother, that was not a disparaging remark. That was an observation that she made. And that was how she could relate to it. She understood that her grandmother was a lesbian, and she understood that this woman in her house looked like her grandmother. Maybe it was the boyish haircut, maybe it's the way she acted, carried herself, but whatever. It was not a remark to disparage this person and make them feel less about themselves. That's not what it was. And oddly enough, they have body cam footage of those words being stated from the 16-year-old girl, and they will not release it. The video that I'll show you here in a second is video that the mother shot once things escalated after that confrontation took place. So I want to make that very, very clear that we're not going to see what the girl said. And out of fairness, I'm taking the family side right now, not law enforcement. And I think you'll see why. Law enforcement was clearly wrong in this case, but this family has no reason to lie about this. And because I know about autistic children, I understand where this little girl is coming from. And I know she was not trying to belittle this person right here. So let me show you guys a couple of clips real quick. This one right here is a news report by the Independent. Let me pull that back up so you guys can see this one. Where's the Independent at? There we go. Okay. Let me play this clip right here. And this is, again, from the Independent, but it is simply their very quick news report on this. So let me make sure that you guys are going to have audio on that too. I've screwed up on that before and not giving you audio. And let me give you full screen, because I think this is important for you to be able to see this really, really well. Okay, guys, here's the clip from the Independent.
Comment in her own house. She hasn't said anything to you. No matter. She's getting arrested.
She's getting arrested. That's the cop.
She's getting arrested. Why are you doing this? Coming. Don't worry. She hasn't done anything. She's autistic. I don't care. She's autistic. I know you're arrested.
Okay, I'm going to play the whole thing. I want to. There needs to be some context established right here so you understand what you're looking at. First of all, look right. Let me find it. This is like a little cubby under a stairwell. You can barely see. You can see the that's the mother holding her own phone, pointing at the daughter in that little cubby right there. That's a crawl space essentially under the stairwell that goes up to the second floor of the house. That's apparently a safe space for the autistic girl whenever she's upset. So this is after that exchange took place where she said she looked like her grandmother, who was a lesbian. this lesbian looking person is now saying that she's going to be arrested, that she knows this girl is autistic. Her mom has repeatedly told her that. She's continuing to tell her right now in this video. You can hear her saying it multiple times. And yet this lesbian looking person is demanding that they will remove this 16-year-old autistic girl, regardless of these circumstances, based on a quote hate crime, because she said the girl looked like her grandmother, who is a lesbian. Very clear that you have to see that. I want you to understand this context super, super clearly. And you might be able to hear the audio. I know I can, but the girl is actually hitting herself in the head also because she's upset. They're making this escalate to where this girl is now self-injuring. Really pathetic. Let me play it from the beginning again, guys.
Comment in her own house. You've got her on camera. She hasn't said anything to you. Don't matter. Don't matter. She's getting arrested. She's getting arrested. Why are you doing this? Coming. Don't worry. She hasn't done anything. She's autistic. I don't care. She's autistic. I know you're arrested. I'm telling you, I've got Eunice coming. She's going to be arrested tonight. And wait till he says he's coming on. Like, explain what happened.
That's why we got her in the first place.
Calm down. She's autistic. Can you stop staring at her, please? She's got autism. Can you just stand there?
Yeah, I don't know how you guys feel about that, but it's tough for me to watch that and, have any level of respect for these people. And I'm sorry, this is going all over the place here. Let me get this screen away from here now. And I have some other ones that I want to show you. As you can see, the girl was hitting herself in the head. And as you can see, the lesbian looking police officer is also saying, I don't care. When the mom is saying she's autistic, could you please stop approaching her? She says, I don't care. Without going into too much about being an autistic father, meaning the father of an autistic child, I can tell you that a lot of these words that this lesbian looking person said, she was empowered to do those things and say those things because she wouldn't last a brief moment in this country doing that. You have to understand also that the United States has a constitution and a very strong one. The UK has a set of rules that they follow, and they are certainly not as protective of the citizen or as the person, the people, as our Constitution is. And I'll get more into why we're even covering this here in a minute. This is very important that we see what's happening in the UK with this and understand how it can impact us over here too. I have reasons for doing all this. I want to now point to you, let's see, the West Yorkshire Police then had a response from that. And let me pull this up. I don't think the response helped any. I don't think they did themselves any favors by putting this official statement out. And let's go to that and we'll read that. As you can see, this is from the official West Yorkshire Police Department, their own Twitter page or X page, whatever you want to call the app now. And this is their statement. If you guys will bear with me, I will read the entire thing. In relation to an incident in Leeds on Monday where a 16-year-old girl was arrested on suspicion of a homophobic public order offense, West Yorkshire Police has now reviewed the evidence and made the decision to take no further action. Now, they could have stopped right there and probably saved face. But they want to, you have to understand that this police department just had a big pride involvement in a gay pride parade or something like that, a function like last week or the week before. So they're still virtue signaling. They're not okay, and they're not happy with just saying we're not going to pursue any further charges or whatever. Which, by the way, they held this girl for 20 hours in jail before they let her go, with no explanation of the charges or anything like that. In other words, no official charging or anything. 20 hours in jail. You need to start respecting and realizing that our laws are significantly better than over there. Anyway, they go on to say, this concludes the criminal investigation and immediately releases the girl from her bail. Her Her family has been updated. Now, they make it sound like they're doing the family a favor. We're releasing her from her bail. Should have never been there to begin with. West Yorkshire's Police's Professional Standards Directorate is continuing to carry out a review of the circumstances after receiving a complaint in relation to the incident. Assistant Chief Constable Oz Khan said, "We recognize the significant level of public concern that this incident has generated, and we have moved swiftly to fully review the evidence in the criminal investigation, which has led to the decision to take no further action." So lack of evidence is what he meant. Without preempting the outcome of the ongoing review of the circumstances by our Professional Standards Directorate, we would like to reassure people that we will take on board any lessons to be learned from the incident. We do appreciate the understandable sensitivities around incidents involving young people and neurodiversity, and we are genuinely committed to developing how to respond to these often very challenging situations. So essentially what he's telling you here is, we are not acknowledging that we made a mistake. The public is a little bit outraged, and he's making it sound like that's the public's problem. Maybe they got a little excited about this, and we're sorry the public got excited. And he's saying that they're committed to developing how they respond to these often very challenging situations. I didn't see a challenge. I don't know if you guys saw a challenge or not. I don't know how the 16-year-old autistic girl, again, I'm trying to be fair here, I don't know how she called or said this statement that this woman looked like her lesbian grandmother. She was not saying it in a disparaging way that was negative about her grandmother either. In other words, if you had a crackhead uncle, you told somebody, "You look like my crackhead uncle," that's a cut down. This girl was not wording it like that. And again, not having the body cam video, I don't want to, I guess, suppose too much into that, although the wording of it doesn't sound like she was saying this in a negative way towards the lesbian looking woman police officer. But nevertheless, they paint this entire response by the police department like it's your problem. Like you have a problem here and we're dealing with your problem. We're dealing with the public not understanding the challenging situation that we work under, even though there's video. Now, I don't know if they have a Freedom of Information Act over there. I don't know if they have to release body cam video. They likely don't. A lot of those countries outside the United States can do pretty much whatever they want to. So I doubt they're going to be held to account and have to show the video. I searched everywhere for it. The actual body cam video is not out there. And again, the mother didn't start videoing until kind of things started to escalate in this. So a really poor response, if you ask me, about this whole situation. And now I want you to see a couple of more videos that are, I apologize for the way that they're filmed. They're filmed for TikTok, which is that silly little portrait way instead of landscape. So let me grab those real quick and we will take a look at them. Where is that one at? Here we go. Okay, bear with me 1 second and let's catch this one first. I need to make sure that I got everything from my audio. I don't see the audio. Why is that audio?
She's made a comment in her own house. You've got her own camera. She hasn't said anything to you. Don't matter. She never come back. She's getting arrested. She's getting arrested. Why are you doing this? Don't worry. She hasn't done anything.
This is an extended version of what I just showed you guys. It's a little bit longer without the faces blurred out so you can see it a little better.
Autistic. I don't care. She's autistic. I know you're arrested. I'm telling you, I've got Eunice coming. She's going to be arrested tonight. And wait till police officers coming on. Like, explain what happened.
That's why we got her in the first place.
Calm down. She's autistic. Can you stop staring at her, please? She's got autism. Can you just stand there? She's in a cupboard. She can't go anywhere. She can't go anywhere. Stand there, dear. They're going to remove her for what? With your woman. Think she said the word lesbian. Her nana is a lesbian. She's married to a woman. She's not homophobic. Look what you're clenching your fist. Go away from my teenage daughter.
What is up with you?
There is something wrong with you, mate. She didn't aim it at the police officer.
Homophobic remarks at my colleague.
It's not a homophobic remark. She said, I think she's a lesbian like Nana.
She called. If you want to bully people, you'll just get one of them badges there. That's what you do.
Yeah, exactly.
Where's this? This is going to
Right number there.
She's autistic. She don't like people touching her.
Right.
She will have a meltdown.
What's your name?
She won't come out. She's got autism. I'm Lisa.
Talk to her so she can come out. 'Cause we're trying not to do this, aren't we? We've been trying for a long time.
But she hasn't done nothing wrong. That officer out there has assaulted me for no reason. She's got autism. She's autistic, man.
The issue is, if an officer decides to arrest her,
She wasn't arrested.
No,
They brought her up.
she's under arrest.
No, but she was going upstairs and she made a comment to me, and that officer ran in my house and assaulted me and tried to get to my daughter for
If
now.
you want to make a complaint about any of it, that's
I
fine.
am
All the
going
cameras
to.
that will have been on.
I am going to. Yeah, because
The issue
it is on, and she has.
She's now under arrest.
She was full of rage and she ran in the house and she barged me into this corner.
All right. So that's the one clip. I would like to point out also that these law enforcement officers forced their way into this home. They were not invited into this house, and they did not have a warrant, yet they came in anyway. Again, this is in England. This is not the United States. So clearly things apply a little bit differently. Now, this is the end of the video, or the continuation of it, I should say, where they head outside. And I don't know why I don't have audio on this one, but oh, they don't have audio on this one. So this is just showing you what happened. So they got her. The girl also has scoliosis. So they're pulling on her arms after they dragged her outside. You can see she's in pain. This is a 16-year-old child. That's the lesbian-like creature right there that is not being tolerant of anything. And I say that not anti-lesbian because I don't care what you do in the privacy of your own home. But whenever you make it about you, which is what this lesbian-looking thing did, then I have a problem with it. And let me give you some additional backstory that now you will appreciate a little bit as to where this this police force, let me find it here. Stand by. Here we go. All right. Let me grab this, and you will understand why this monster is making about herself, and she is virtue signaling on company time. And this will help you understand why she's backing this up and why she is pushing so hard on this. Here we go. Okay. This is from the West Yorkshire Police LGBTQ. Apparently, the gay folks in the West Yorkshire Police have their own Twitter. So I guess the West Yorkshire Police Department has one, and then the West Yorkshire Police Department LGBTQ has their own Twitter page. And this was, do I have a date on this? August the 6th. So this was what, a few days ago? Yeah, 7 days ago, which this happened 3 days ago. So this was 4 days prior to them attacking the 16-year-old in her own home. 4 days prior, this same police force, quote, had a great day supporting Leeds Pride. Some people have asked why comments have been turned off on our earlier posts. Some of the responses demonstrate exactly why Pride is so important and why we will continue to work with and support our LGBT communities. And you see the law enforcement officers with rainbow vests, rainbows painted on their faces. And I don't have personally any problem with them supporting this cause. But to me, they took it a step further. And instead of simply being supportive of other people, and I'm sure there's like this, the lesbian looking person, she more than likely is a lesbian. That's why she was so offended by somebody calling her out. So if these people want to support a cause, that's fine. But it cannot become part of your work and part of your goal whenever you are doing something. In other words, whenever they go to this girl's house and she mentions that this woman looks like a lesbian, like her Nana, this person, and I have to go back to her again because she needs to be put on blast. I really feel like that. I'll find her name too, because I have a real problem with this. And excuse me, guys, I am doing this all by myself. So which one was that? Was that the Mark one? Yeah. Okay. So this person right here, my point in discussing this way is that This person made it about herself. You could tell by her body language. You could tell by her demeanor. You could tell by her tone of voice. And you could tell by her actual words that said, I don't care. That she truly did not care about this handicapped person in this house. Now, you might be thinking, and she might have been thinking, well, she doesn't seem real autistic to me. Well, she does to me. Just because the child can dress a certain way, because she looked like she was dressed like a teenage girl. I dress my son every day. My son cannot dress himself. I dress my son the way other kids his age would look. So if it's cool to wear an Under Armour t-shirt, I don't know, and Levi blue jeans, which I would never let my son wear Levi's. It would be howitzer jeans or something like that. If that's what the other cool kids are wearing, I'm probably going to dress my son that same way. If I let my son dress himself, he would more than likely wear pajamas all day or his bathing suit. My son, just like a lot of these autistic children, could give, excuse my French, two shits what everybody else thinks about how they look. They simply don't care. They don't comb their hair a certain way. They don't do anything. I comb my son's hair when I pick him up every time and when he leaves in the morning, and it don't get combed again after that because he doesn't care what his hair looks like. He just simply doesn't care. They will also have food on their mouth sometimes because they don't care about that kind of stuff. The appearance and how they are viewed by other people, they don't care. So this girl might look normal. Some people probably would use that phrase. But don't let looks fool you. She clearly, you can see by her meltdown that she is in a traumatic situation as this lesbian-like person here decides to make this about her. And the way she's making it about her, one, she's clearly a poster child for the Pride movement in England right now. I mean, look at her. Two, she was likely at that parade, or at least in support of that Pride parade 4 days earlier. And three, she thought this would be her badge of honor. She thought that she would take advantage of their laws over there in England, that now homophobia is considered a hate crime in England. So she thought she could make this about her and make sure that this 16-year-old autistic handicapped person was prosecuted in the name of pride. I did it for the team. I took one for the team. I was harassed and attacked by a 16-year-old handicapped child, and by God, I didn't let up. I'm throwing the book at her. She's going to be arrested, like she said, and I don't care, like she said. Not thinking for 1 minute that there's a handicapped child, 16-year-old child in this room. She can see that the little girl is in a panic stage. She can hear the screams. She can see the panic in her voice. Or hear the panic in her voice. She can see the panic in her face. She sees her hiding in a cubby that no other 16-year-old would be hiding in if they did not have some kind of a mental handicap. Yet she doesn't care because this is all about her. She's making this about her. This is my chance to be somebody important. This is my chance to be popular. Now all my gay friends will think that I'm the coolest because I made sure that I did not tolerate this girl saying that I look like her lesbian grandmother. Yay, lesbian. Good for you. And again, I got to say this again. I don't have a problem with lesbians. I have a problem with people like this who stand on the challenges that other lesbians might face and make it about them like this. It's like the person calling wolf. It's like the person calling everybody else racist. Does racism exist? Absolutely it does. But when you call everything racist that happens to you, but it's because you're stupid, lazy, and don't want to do anything, that doesn't mean that it's racist. So now you've watered it down for all the people who are dealing with true racism because you're too lazy or incompetent and don't want to make changes in your own life. The same with this person right here. For every actual, and I'm not pretending to know what happens in their world because I don't, but for every actual hate crime, or let's just call it an injustice, for every bullying effort against a gay person in England, this fool right here just watered it down for all of them because she's crying wolf about something that does not apply. There was no hate crime here. There was no crime for sure, but there was certainly no hate crime. She twisted this completely out of context, again, to make it about her. And that was her goal all along. So that's who I have a problem with. Does she happen to be lesbian? Probably. Look at her. But that's not why I have a problem with this person. It's because she's hell-bent on making it about her. And oh, by the way, she's completely ignored the fact that she is dealing with a handicapped person. The one thing that I take away from this entire video and this series of videos is if you watch every one of these law enforcement officers in here, especially this lesbian-looking one, no compassion, no knowledge of people who are autistic. I can't find a better organization like this police department that needs some kind of intervention to teach them how to deal with autistic people, because clearly all these people, 100% ignorant, 100% ignorant, no education whatsoever. And I have said this down here in Louisiana before. I've talked to my local politicians at the state level, and I have been very clear to them. If you want me to be on a board to help put together some kind of significant training for law enforcement whenever they do approach these children, I'm all ears. I will donate my time, my resources. I will do whatever I have to do. Not because I'm mad at law enforcement, because I want to educate law enforcement. Because if they have had no private experience with autistic children, and you have one speak frankly to you in a very monotone way, you might think that they're verbally attacking you. You might think that they're refusing something, but they're not. That's how they operate. My son will probably, this will probably never happen to him because my son will never be on his own. My son requires 24-hour supervision. So it's very unlikely that my son makes it out of our yard and goes out into the public on his own unnoticed, and law enforcement encounters him without us being there. It's very unlikely that's ever going to take place, but it could. And if it did, my son is nonverbal and my son looks normal. If you looked at my son looks normal. And as I said, I dress him like every other school age child that's his age and in his grade. So if you saw my son walking down the street, other than some odd hand gestures or something like that, you would think he was perfectly normal. As a law enforcement officer, if you approach my son, told him to stop, he might stop. He might keep walking. If you asked him for his ID, he would completely ignore you because he doesn't know what an ID is and he doesn't have an ID. If you told him to put his hands behind his back, he may not understand what you're telling him. If you told him get down on the ground, he may not understand what you're telling him. Next thing you know, you're tasing my son and you're throwing him in the back of a vehicle completely traumatized because he does not understand what you're telling him and he doesn't understand the situation. And now he knows that you're hurting him. But you did all of this because you had no education. These people clearly in England have no education on dealing with handicapped people like this. And let me tell you right now, this used to be a phenomenon where 1 out of 200 and something children, and let's talk about males, for instance, because boys are more likely to be born autistic than girls. 1 out of 212 it used to be. It's 1 in 59 boys right now. 1 in 59 boys right now was born autistic. Now, there's massive ranges of autism out there. But when I look at like this girl here, she is not going to function on her own out in public. Somebody might give her a job helping out in a grocery store or something like that, but she's going to require constant supervision. She's not going to go off to college, more than likely. Her parents are likely she's probably going to live with her parents for the rest of her life. She does not appear that somebody that's going to function independently on their own. Now, I may be wrong about that, but just a little bit that I can see, I don't think that that's going to happen. So there are different levels. Now, the higher functioning autistic children, of course, they're going to understand most commands. Their voice will likely be a little bit more monotone, so you will think they have an attitude when you talk to them. But if law enforcement is never educated on how to deal with these people, this is going to be a recurring theme that you're going to see more and more and more. And the funny thing, I've talked to, and I don't want to say who it is because I don't want to offend them because I like them and they're nice. They're nice. I think they're a good person. But locally, I spoke to somebody in law enforcement in my area. And I told them this exact thing, that I would be willing to donate my time, my resources, and any efforts I could bring in resources of my own and work to educate local law enforcement. Hopefully we could develop a program that could be used nationwide. You know what they told me? Oh yeah, we already have that kind of training. I'm like, really? Can I see it? Well, I mean, it's not like an actual program. It's just like, we understand that there's autistic kids out there and you have to approach them differently. It's like, are y'all training them on how to approach them differently? Are y'all, giving courses? There's enough video out there. Are you showing videos? No, we just, we do cover that whenever our I don't want to call them cadets, whenever the new people come in, recruits. When the recruits come in, we go over that. So it's probably a binder this big, and they probably go, and there's autistic children. You got to approach them a little bit differently. And then the red lights are red, the green lights are green. And if somebody jaywalks, you give them you see what I mean? They probably blaze right through it. So even local law enforcement here is not really willing to educate their people. In other words, they think they've all got it figured out. They think that they know everything already. And who am I to question whether or not they know it? If they were to come across my son on the street by himself, which again is very unlikely, my son would likely be in jail. And I don't know how long it would be until they would be able to trace him back to my house, because he can't tell them where he lives. He can't tell them my name. He can't tell them my phone number. So they would have to be searching and say, is anybody missing a 14-year-old boy that won't tell us where he lives or what his name is? So imagine how long I would have to wait before I find out where my son is. It's just, that's the kind of stuff that drives me nuts. Now I'm going to go a little bit more into the story here. Let me pull some of these other slides. Oh, this is what I wanted to do. Now I want to explain to you a little bit here about the laws over in the UK. This will blow your mind. Okay. This is, and let me try to get this blown up where you guys can see it. It looks like it's not going to work right on the page, but this is from the website cps.gov.uk. This is a website dealing with law in the United Kingdom. So let me make sure you guys can see this okay. Yes, you can. Okay. Hate crime. I've got my notes here, so I want to go through my notes with you when I look at this. Look at this first section. The law recognizes 5 types of hate crime on the basis of race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, transgender identity. I guess they've added people who are pretending. Now, we've discussed in relatively good detail what happened in this instance where they arrested the 16-year-old girl, right? I think everybody kind of understands what happened here. They escorted her home. She got home. She said one of them looked like her lesbian grandmother, and then they arrested her and held her for 20 hours without bail. That was the crime. She looks like my lesbian grandmother, or she looks like a lesbian like Nana, is what she said. Look below that. These people, man. Any crime can be prosecuted as a hate crime if the offender has either paid particular attention to this, demonstrated hostility based on race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. Look at that first part again. If they have demonstrated hostility, do you think saying that person looks like a lesbian like Nana is a hostile statement? Do you sense any hostility in that? I don't. So we got to go on next where it says or they've been motivated by hostility based on race, religion, disability, sexual orientation, or transgender identity. Do you feel like the 16-year-old autistic girl was motivated by hostility? So did she demonstrate hostility, or was she motivated by hostility? The answer is clearly no. That's a rhetorical question because I know the answer. I would also like to point out before we move on, if you look right here, and I hope you guys can see my highlight there. I can't really see on that screen. Yeah, you can see it. Notice that a hate crime can also be against a person with a disability. Now, it looks like we're weighing which of these things in this 5 categories up here for hate crimes that we want to weight a little more. So do we want to say that a person with a disability is more of a crime, or a person with a sexual orientation is more of a crime? So according to this video, we're at the point of trying to decide which one of these is more important to us. After looking at the video, I find it really hard to believe that this family is not filing suit. And again, this is in England, so I don't understand how their law works. But I would be suing, excuse my French, the shit out of this police department based on this being a potential hate crime that this person had against my 16-year-old autistic child with a disability versus her sexual orientation crime that she thinks it is. I would be filing a petition for a hate crime against that very person who arrested this 16-year-old autistic child. Let's go down here a little bit further. Someone can be a victim of more than one type of hate crime. And I don't know if that was where I wanted to go with that. I don't think there was anything else there that I wanted to go. What's the rule? Oh, yeah. Okay. This was interesting to me. And I'm sorry, some of it goes off the page over here. See if I can get it where you can read it all. This sentence right here. Look at this. There, and again, this is in the UK, guys. I keep saying that in case we have new people coming in here. There is no legal definition of hostility. Remember, we said that earlier, right? We asked about if she had demonstrated hostility based on sexual orientation or if she had been motivated by hostility. They use that word twice. Well, guess what? They don't have a definition of it. So they state this. There is no legal definition of hostility, so we use the everyday understanding of the word, which includes ill will, spite, contempt, prejudice, unfriendliness, antagonism, resentment, and dislike. So I'm highlighting the word unfriendliness. So you're telling me your reason for justifying locking up a 16-year-old disabled autistic girl is because it was unfriendly what she said. Now, again, why am I spending so much time on this story? And I need to talk to you guys directly on this because this is so important to me. I'm going to come back to this slide. This to me is so important, and I'll say this again at the end of the video, but I wanted to put this out there right now. Our politicians in Washington, D.C. are very incompetent. You've got the likes of Joe Biden, John Fetterman, Mitch McConnell, Dianne Feinstein, Maxine Waters, Hank Johnson, Sheila Jackson Lee. The list goes on of stupid people in Congress. There's a massive list. 535 people, I'd say half of them are stupid. The other half are probably just about there. Our lawmakers have one job. I'm not saying this is legitimate, but they have one job. Make more laws. You don't think we have enough laws in the book already? They don't. They think their job is to just make more laws. If they're not making laws, we have no use for them. They race to be the next one that has their new little stupid law put into place so that they can brag about it to their constituents back home. So they all want to introduce a new law. Every one of those people, and I don't care who they are. Don't give me this about the Democrat or this one. It's all of them. They all want to have a law put in place because that's their claim to fame. And now they can go back and brag about it. And look what I did. Reelect me now. But they're stupid. Most of them are very incompetent. And most of them are spending more time kissing babies and stealing money with insider trading to really pay attention to what's really happening in the world. So when they see hot topic items like this 16-year-old girl, they may be sympathetic of the 16-year-old autistic girl being arrested. But whenever they read more of this story and they come over here, and I want to bring this back to you now, when they come over here and see that, wow, the UK actually has a law where you can arrest somebody for being unfriendly. Do not think that our politicians in this country aren't looking at this quietly, making notes. Holy shit. We need to put a new law out there that says if you're unfriendly towards somebody who's a lesbian, if you're unfriendly to somebody because they have a limp, If you're unfriendly to somebody because they're wearing a COVID mask, you can be put in jail as a result of that. Because, hey, England is a developed country, one of the oldest countries in the world, and they have this. So we need something like that because, hey, let's face it, if we want to modernize our own set of laws like England, we're going to need a law like this. This will happen over here. It may not actually get passed into law. They will put something like this up to try to make it a hate crime because they don't have a definition. Now, likely our politicians will define the word, and they will likely define the word hostility to include unfriendliness. Let me read that sentence to you guys again. I want to make sure we understand this. Since they don't have a definition for the word hostility, they use the everyday understanding of the word, which includes ill will, spite, contempt, prejudice, unfriendliness, antagonism, resentment, and dislike. You know what this is? This is a direct attack on the First Amendment. I'm not saying it's right to have ill will, spite, contempt, prejudice, unfriendliness, be antagonistic, resentful, or dislike any of these people. I'm not saying that's acceptable. What I am saying is you have a First Amendment right to say those things. And you have to remember that once the first law is passed, where we accept an infringement on any of our constitutional rights, I'm not talking about just the Second Amendment. Once you as the voter accepts something that goes against the Constitution, if you allow the First Amendment to be used against you for free speech, to put you in jail, your Second Amendment is going to go away just as fast. Why? Because you accepted it on the first. And they will use that in their favor to tell you, why are you bitching about your Second Amendment rights? You were okay with me taking away your First Amendment rights. This is the kind of stuff that is an absolute cancer. If this crap winds up in the United States, this will metastasize. This will grow like you have never seen a weed grow before. We cannot let this kind of crap happen. And I'm telling you, lawmakers are seeing this happen in the UK, and they are trying to find a way to justify this being something that they can introduce at some point. I want everyone to tell me I'm right when they see a law like this actually get introduced. I know I keep my head buried into the Second Amendment stuff so much where I don't see some of the other BS that comes out. But if something like this comes out, I want you guys to share that with me because I'm telling you, I do believe this is going to happen. One thing I want to point out real quick about that story too. This 16-year-old girl did not know if this lesbian-looking person was a lesbian or not. You know what I'm saying? She didn't even know that. Maybe she is a lesbian, maybe she's not. So is the person mad because she is a lesbian and she got called a lesbian? Or is she mad because she's not a lesbian and got called looking like a lesbian? I mean, either way, why is the person upset? I don't know why they would be upset about that. If I'm gay and you call me gay, that should not upset me. And if I'm not gay and you call me gay, that shouldn't upset me either because I'm not gay. So I don't understand why this person even let it bother her if she wasn't virtue signaling, trying to act like this needs to be about her now. That's why I'm so upset about this being her being that it's about her. And I really got to point this out too. What's the role of the CPS in prosecuting hate crime? First sentence: the police investigate and obtain evidence to show a crime has been committed. Well, they have since dropped the charges against this girl. Clearly, they had no evidence. But again, not knowing the laws in the UK, on what grounds did you pick her up and arrest her for 20 hours anyway? What was the evidence that you had? Was it just her saying that you looked like her lesbian nana? Let's see. Let's get a little bit further down here. This is where I want to talk a little bit more about who needs some education here. How are we tackling hate crime and what impact are we having? Look at that first bullet. Notice this. We train all our prosecutors on hate crime. Now, when I'm reading this in the back of my mind, this is from a legal, a place. I don't know, again, cps.gov.uk. It's from a legal website. So in the back of my mind, I'm thinking the whole time, okay, cool. Show me where they're training law enforcement. Keep that in the back of your mind. We train all prosecutors on hate crime. All right. That's not law enforcement. We quality check our cases regularly. Okay, that's not law enforcement. We hold our regular feedback groups locally and national. Okay, that's not law enforcement. We publish public policy statements to explain how we prosecute hate crime. That's still not. And finally, we work closely with partners across the criminal justice sector and beyond to help the public understand hate crime and what we can do to tackle it. Well, maybe, just maybe, this is a suggestion from somebody across the pond. Maybe where you say we work closely with our partners across the criminal justice sector and beyond to help the public understand, maybe we need to replace public, or maybe you just add it and say help the public and law enforcement understand hate crime and what we can do to tackle it. Because clearly law enforcement does not understand hate crimes, and they don't know how to tackle it, and they certainly do not know how to identify it. Let's see. I'm going to move on to my next slide here. Let me find it real quick. Let's see, guys, bear with me one moment. Again, I am a one-man show over here, so I'm trying to get enough of this stuff together for you to where I can complete my analysis of all of this. Well, I think I'm just going to leave this one right here from Breitbart as we finish our discussion. There we go. So there is our victim. Again, we just watched a video on a 16-year-old autistic girl get dragged out of her house for saying that this person right here looked like her lesbian nana. But this person who you're looking at right here is the victim in this case. This is the person that the hate crime was committed against. I want you to wrap your head around that. Understanding what just took place. This person is the victim of a hate crime, and the 16-year-old autistic girl is the suspect. You tell me what's wrong with this picture. And I don't mean literally. I'm talking figuratively. Unbelievable. All I can say, guys, as a parent of an autistic child, and I'm not trying to make this about me, and I apologize if it looks like that. I have stewed on this story for 3 days now and not put anything out on it. I know it's not gun related. My point to it being indirectly gun related is that if we start to allow First Amendment strikes against our own citizenry like they allow in the UK, the Second Amendment will be immediately right behind it. It's not like we don't have enough attacks against the Second Amendment already. But we can't allow any attacks on our Constitution and our Bill of Rights. We just can't allow that. We can't tolerate it in any kind of way. We have to be outspoken if any laws like this come to our shores. We cannot let people with an agenda like this person in this picture who is trying to take one for the team. Oh, I'm the victim of a hate crime. We can't allow that to come over here. Because if we do, we're opening up Pandora's box like you never saw opened up before. And just like we talk about confiscation with guns, for instance. I think most of us would agree that law enforcement in general will never go door to door to try to confiscate weapons. Why? Because I don't think, and this is not a threat from me, so any of the Fed boys who are watching this, I'm not threatening anybody. I'm speaking on a reality of how the American people will respond in general. You probably don't own enough body bags to send random law enforcement into the mountains, the backwoods, to urban areas, to rural areas, to any area that might have people that have guns who are not going to tolerate your infringement. That will end in a very ugly way. It would never be a good idea in order to do that. If they allow a law like this to ever take place, and any of these people try to force their way into somebody's home, I'm not talking about me directly. I'm speaking indirectly on behalf of handicapped parents out there who have handicapped children like mine. If you come to my front door, and I'm speaking as if I'm somebody else here, I'm being very careful for this not to come across as a threat. If I am Joe Blow with an autistic child, and you go to Joe Blow's front door, and my autistic child says, you look like a lesbian, and if you force your way into my house, the full weight of the Constitution will come down on you in every conceivable way. The full weight of the Constitution will come down on you. It will be the worst decision of your life to do that. And I am certainly not, I want you guys to understand this. I'm not one of these kind of people that tries to make my challenges in life look worse than yours. I don't one up people, if you know what I mean. I'm not the kind of guy that says, somebody says their car can do 50 miles an hour. I go, well, mine can do 55. I don't, that's not my style. I don't do that. So I'm not trying to make you think that my challenges with my handicapped son are more challenging than yours, because I truly believe, and this probably is something that helps keep me going, keeping me positive about life with my own son, because my son needs 24-hour care. I recognize that no matter what level of what severity out there, everybody has their own cross to bear. Everybody has their own challenges in life. Everybody has their own things that they're working on in their life. You know, their own speed bumps, their own roadblocks. Everybody does. And yours is no worse than mine. Now, I might not be able to handle yours as good as you can handle yours, but it doesn't mean that it's worse than mine. It doesn't mean that mine's any better or worse than yours. In other words, we all have challenges in our life. I have an autistic son. You know what I don't have to worry about? I never have to worry about my son getting hooked on drugs like Hunter Biden. I never have to worry about that. My son will never be around drugs. My son will never get addicted to cocaine, heroin. My son will never get addicted to porn. My son will never get killed in his own drunk driving accident. My son will never become an alcoholic. Those are things I look at that are major positives in my life, because I've seen one of my very close friends lose a 20-year-old son to fentanyl. I'll never have that fight in my life. So while you may look at my challenge as being one that you feel bad for me, I look at yours and say, I feel bad for yours, which I think is a compassionate way that we look at each other. It's a good thing. I think that we all just need to understand that we all have our own challenges. And I mean, let's face it, maybe you have a spouse who's an asshole. I don't. You know what I mean? We all have our things. Maybe your spouse is cheating on you. Maybe you're cheating on your spouse. Everybody has their own thing in their life that is a hardship to them in one way or the other. And it's got nothing to do with money. Nothing to do with money. It's the things that you are dealing with in your life. So that's why it's important for me to make you understand, those of you who don't have, handicapped children, that this is not about me saying that my life is harder than yours. I don't imply that whatsoever, but I want you to understand how the mind of a parent of a handicapped child works. And this is, I've done some speaking engagements, and this is the best way that I can describe this. And most people really get it whenever I put it like this. Okay. Understand that some children on the autism spectrum could physically defend themselves if they were being attacked. Most of them wouldn't, because their minds are not made like that. They would get defensive like this, but they likely would not strike back. And they certainly wouldn't have a gun that they shoot somebody with. In most cases. You got your super high functioning autistic Asperger's that are a little bit different. I'm speaking in general with most autistic children. So they have no defense mechanism other than putting their own hands up. And that's pretty much it. So as a parent, I'm responsible for 100% of the protection of my son, no matter how old my son is. When he's 30 years old, I will be his only source of defense. That's it. Other than him putting his hands up, he will not be able to defend himself. You could beat him to a pulp, beat him to death, and he would not do anything. He wouldn't pick something else up to hit you back. Coincidentally, he's walking by my studio window right now. Hey, bud. Hey, bud. So I'm trying to put you into this box that I'm in. So to understand how defenseless my son is and why your mind, you assume 100% of the responsibility to protect him. Picture it like this. Let's say your child is perfectly neurotypical, like they function and they think just like everybody else. Like you hold a good conversation, just a normal child. And I don't mind saying normal. Some people are like, oh, you're saying your autistic son's not normal? No, it's not normal. I'm not one of these kind of guys that tries to find cushy words about it. My son is not normal. I know this. He looks normal, but he is not normal. That is a fact. If you're offended by that, stop watching my videos. But that is an absolute fact. I'm not downplaying what my son has. My son has a pretty, bad disability. So picture your child who is perfectly normal here. Picture them sitting on the side of a pool, right? A deep pool, shallow pool, doesn't matter. Let's say a 8-foot deep pool. They're sitting on the edge of the pool. You're probably not worried about them, are you? Your child is perfectly normal. They understand the danger. They understand the water's deep. They understand they could drown, right? So they're sitting on the edge of the pool of an 8-foot deep pool. Now picture your same child with no arms and no legs sitting on the edge of that pool. If you were 50 feet from them and now you saw them where they don't have arms and legs sitting next to the pool, doesn't your approach to their safety really change significantly? Well, if they had arms and legs and were perfectly normal neurotypically, and they're sitting on the edge of that pool, you're thinking they're going to be cool. You might yell at them, hey, be careful. But if they got no arms and legs and you know they will sink straight to the bottom if they fall in that pool and they're sitting right on the edge, you become really protective of them. And you're not going to wait when you're 50 feet from them. You're going to sprint over there and pull them from the edge of that pool. Why? Because you know they can't swim. You can swim and you can protect them, but they can't. And that's how I feel. And that's how a lot of parents that I speak to on a regular basis that have autistic children or handicapped children in general who cannot take care of themselves or defend themselves, that's how they feel. If we have a defensive nature about us, let's say the whole defensive nature I have is 100% defensive nature. Well, I've just assumed 100% of my son's defensive nature. So now I have 200% defensive nature because I've assumed every bit of his because he can't utilize his. And I have to realize that I am directly responsible for 100% of that boy's safety. That's how these parents feel. So this was an important story to me. Like I said, I struggled about putting a video out on this for the last couple of days because it really pissed me off. The more I looked at it, the more it made me mad to see how this child was treated. And look, this ain't the only time. I've seen cases in the United States, not regarding hate crime, but I saw a 12, 13, 14-year-old autistic boy, similar to what I was describing earlier, that got tased because law enforcement went to pick him up and he refused to get into the car and started to fight with them. He was having a meltdown and they tased this kid. I've also seen another instance. I believe the kid died in another instance. To give you an idea, this is the last thing I'll tell you. And again, I'm sorry to bore you guys if you're bored with the conversation about this. It's near and dear to my heart, so I have to talk about it. I remember a story, and this brought me and my wife to tears the other day. We saw a story where an autistic child who was going to school rode a bus home, and the bus driver, because the autistic children are not ones to speak up, and a lot of times they're very quiet, they did not say, you passed my bus stop up. So this school bus driver brought everybody home, and that autistic child sat in the back of that bus. Where this was, and I think it was California, they parked the buses. Like in here in Louisiana, most of the bus drivers drive the bus home. But in California, they park the buses at a big lot where all the school buses are, and they drive their personal vehicle home. This school bus driver parked that vehicle in this lot in the summer, got out, closed the door, and went home. The next day, they found a dead autistic child in the back of that bus. They don't have a defensive mechanism. This child knew he was hot, not where he was supposed to be, and likely dying. And still, the brain is not telling them, get out of this bus. Go find somebody to help. This child died in the back of that bus. So that's my point, that you have to understand these people's, even the higher functioning autistic kids, in a lot of cases, they simply do not function normally. And that's why it's heartbreaking to me to see this 16-year-old girl treated like this, because in her mind, she's in her safe space and some strangers are yanking her out of that safe space, brought her to a strange place, jail, for 20 hours away from her parents, and then let her out over her saying, you look like my Nana who's a lesbian. Guys, we cannot let that stuff get here to the United States. We cannot let our First Amendment rights, no matter how ugly they might be. A person should be able to stand on a hill and yell, you look like a lesbian. They should be able to do that without any repercussions. Do I think it's right? No, I don't. I've got no reason to do that, and I don't support people who do. But I support anybody who should have the right to say that. We cannot get to a point where we allow things like what happened here, where there was something that was unkind that was said, to allow that to be a, quote, hate crime. And I have a problem with hate crimes anyway. If you commit a crime, there should be one penalty for that crime. Not one if it's a hate crime and another one if it's just a regular crime. A crime is a crime is a crime is a crime. The putting the word hate in it is absolutely stupid. But again, our politicians will likely see this and realize that's pretty cool. We can shut a lot of people up if we make it a hate crime to say something unkind, either online, in person, or whichever. Guys, that's all I got for today. This was a topic that I didn't want to just put a video out because I felt like it would be a long video. I apologize that I've taken so much of your time on this, but I felt like you guys needed to understand that while this may seem like an insignificant story, happening across the pond from us doesn't really affect us other than emotions. This is something that we have to watch out for. Our government officials are hell-bent on taking rights away. They don't care what rights they are. Any ones that they can take away, that you let them take away, they're going to take. And that includes the First Amendment as well. We know what they think of the Second Amendment and how badly they want to end that. But the First Amendment, do not think, with all the things that you're seeing going on right now, that that's not going to be on the chopping block too. Folks, I'm going to call it a day. I'm sorry to be a downer. I hope that wasn't too much of a downer for you guys, but I just wanted to put a little bit of, shed a little bit of light on this story. I think this is an important one over here, just as a happy ending, if you want to call it that. I don't know how the little girl is doing. She's back at home. And of course, again, as I stated earlier, they are taking they're dropping the charges on her as if it's a favor to her, but they're dropping the charges and she's not going to be prosecuted, fined additionally, or put in prison or whatever. So we knew that was going to happen, but unfortunately she will never get that 20 hours that she spent in jail back, or the trauma of having strangers yank her out of her house and bring to jail. So there is that, additional trauma. Now, when she sees people in a uniform, she's likely not going to want to have anything to do with them for being traumatized. So, guys, have a great rest of your Sunday. Thank you for tuning in with me. Hopefully do some more live streams like this. For those of you that I haven't been watching the comment section, so I do apologize. But for those of you that contributed to the channel during this, I really appreciate that, guys. Whenever you guys just being here is enough for me. I don't want you to ever think that I expect you guys to donate anything to me. I don't require that. I don't need that, but I'm super duper humbled whenever you do. Thank you. Just understand that in the future, just you guys being here is a lot for me. And I'm perfectly content with that. But again, I see Yes Man, Kaiser Cube, and 80 Helio all made contributions to the channel during the live stream today. And I very much appreciate that, guys. It means a lot to me. And as I've said before, every single dollar that you guys contribute here, I already have a day job that I pay my bills with. every dollar that you guys contribute here, every sharing of my video that might result in some kind of a revenue coming in, I invest it. You know, you're going to see different mixing boards, different cameras. It gets put back into what I do. It may be to buy new t-shirts or something. Maybe it helps me write my next book or something, but I do reinvest 100%, every single dime. None of it pays my bills. It all goes into upgrading what I already have. So means a lot to me, and I appreciate that. And thank you guys. Talk to you guys soon. Thank you for tuning in. Again, I'm Paul Glasgow with Legally Armed America, guys. Thank you so very much. We'll talk to you soon.